I would even go out on a limb and say he's one of the finest photojournalists to come along since the great Henri Cartier-Bresson. And I'm speaking, of course, of the Brazilian-born Sebastião Salgado. And if this is your first introduction to Salgado's work, prepare yourself. He is one of the more intense individuals to ever come along. Salgado kind of has these two sides to him. On the one hand, you have somebody who's got this beautiful, wonderful sense of composition that I haven't seen anybody else look like. He's really the opposite of being a minimalist. He deals with a lot of subjects in his photographs, but delivers them in a very cohesive, beautiful, artistic way. And on the other hand, you have Salgado, who's a very intense individual to begin with, very involved with political activism his entire career. It's kind of had change in recent years, but still very active in using the camera and using art and photography as a way to make the planet better, and realizing the power of the visual image and what that entails and the responsibility behind that. I'll talk some more to Salgado at the end, but I think it's best now to go look at some work. So without further ado, this is the work of Sebastião Salgado. Sebastião Salgado was born in Brazil on February 8, 1944. He grew up on a farm with his 7 sisters. Salgado originally pursued a career in economics, graduating with his master's degree from the University of São Paulo. After beginning his doctorate, he moved to London and worked as an economist for the International Coffee Organization. Around the age of 26, he began to develop an interest in photography. It didn't take long to develop his skill, and within several years, he decided to pursue a second career as a photojournalist. In 1979, he joined Magnum Photos, of which he was a member until starting his own agency in 1994. Salgado's earliest influences included Lewis Hine, W. Eugene Smith, and Walker Evans. Much like his heroes, he developed a style in black and white that found beauty in brutal subjects of poverty, hardship, and oppression of various cultures under the wake of industrialization to the native landscape. Salgado's work for years raised global awareness to varying human conditions, yielding 2 well-known books. The first, in 1986, was a 9-year study of rural cultures in Latin America titled Other Americans. In 1993, his seminal book, Workers, revealed the often harsh conditions of large-scale industrial sites, including oil fields and commercial fisheries. Other well-known photographs include a series in Africa as part of the Doctors Without Borders project, and his most famous photographs were his depictions of gold miners in Serra Pelada. In 2004, his work shifted once again, this time to landscape and wildlife as he began his work on Genesis. Published in 2013, Genesis is a collection of images from some of the most remote parts of the world, as Salgado aimed to capture landscape that is completely untouched by humans. Salgado is also known for his charitable work with organizations such as Doctors Without Borders. He is a Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF and an honorary member of the Academy of Arts and Sciences. He and his wife founded the agency Amazonas Images and co-founded the environmental education center Instituto Terra that works on the restoration of Brazilian rainforests. We're going to look at some work by Sebastião Salgado, and the book I'm using for this is entitled Workers, a very well-known book that he did. It's very dense in terms of the amount of photographs in here and the quality of the images too. This is Aperture Foundation, and it's pretty easy to find. I'll link it up in the show notes. I can't remember whether you can get it new still, but it's certainly easy to find used. There were a lot of copies of this printed, and the images I want to start with today are these. And this is a series. This was actually taken in Brazil. These are gold miners, and Brazil was going through at the time a gold rush that was not unlike what happened in the United States years ago and then Australia as well. But these are like hundreds of thousands of people that are mining gold, and I think these are amazing. And the reason I want to start here is because I think it shows that, in contrast to a lot of the photographers that I feature on this show, we kind of run the gamut, but, my tastes run towards more minimalistic stuff. And Salgado I love, and it's odd because he's a complete 180 from minimalism. There's a minimalist quality, but it deals with a ton of detail. And I don't know if it's picking up in the video well or not, but these are all people down here. And, when you look at the type of photojournalism that he did is so unique. Some of these compositions, the framing choices, and it's so different than what you see, from the European school that Henri Cartier-Bresson started, and even very different from photographers like Robert Frank. It's its own thing, and I think Salgado represents just this amazing voice in the world of photojournalism, and he did, in fact, work for Magnum for years. Here's two more plates from this, and just this pouring out of people. But what's interesting compositionally is he's gotten far enough back to where you have this eye for detail in here, and at the same time, seeing the streams of people. It's almost like herds, and you see the herds in the Genesis series that he did too. So he's a big fan of that, type of scale of a lot of extreme detail. When you pull back, it has a more minimal quality to it that's quite amazing. Another mark that you're going to see a lot in Salgado's work, and early on, in the early days, he shot using a Leica 35mm camera. I think by the time he had gone to Africa and started work on that series, he wanted a bigger negative, and so he moved to 645 format, and then actually today he's shooting digital. It's kind of neither here nor there, but one of the trademarks that I am pointing out with his film usage is it's a hallmark of his style, especially in this era of work, is a lot of this grain texture that you get. Big, obviously classic Tri-X look, high contrast with lots of big grain in it, and I think it just makes such a beautiful image. Is what he was going for. And again, the series of groupings with these fishermen on these boats. A lot of the fishermen images, if you've ever been, back in the days where it was real common to have photographers do annual reports, when you go to work sites, a lot of times, they're not easy to shoot, and for a variety of reasons. And a lot of that is because they're not set up visually. They're set up for people who are doing a lot of work. And to get images of this quality out of those types of sites is very difficult. But Salgado just does it in such a beautiful way. It's amazing. The kinds of action that he'll capture sometime, like these fish splashing around in the nets. Some of this work does get pretty gruesome here because they do start, turning them into food here. But it's just amazing, the amount of detail, the dark quality to these. And as I mentioned in his bio, Salgado was very big into raising awareness of working conditions, and he used photography as his tool to communicate that and his voice. And I think that's what drew him to doing photojournalism, was being able to tell that kind of a story, sometimes better and sometimes for worse. One of my favorite shots of his is this thing of a shipyard where you have these two large boats and just these the tubes that go amongst them here, these hoses. It's just stunning, the quality, the detail. And like I said, if you've ever been to a site like this, they're not as easy to photograph as you would think. It's not like he just opened up the camera and went for it. But, again, looking for these patterns of detail that become a shape in a larger form, with these planks that come around, form the bow of this bow as they're putting it together. It's just simply stunning work. One of my favorite shots of his is this one with the ship, with this, just the way the water forms around here. And then you have this high grain and this, the contrast with the white from the water and the ship that sits right down the middle. And, a lot of these shots are a lot of sit around and wait for hours and hours and hours until the moment comes where you have all the elements that come together to get this beautiful shot. And, stuff like this that's kind of simple too. You have this huge boat out here, but what makes the shot is the little figure in the foreground here. Just extremely beautiful quality to these. And like I said, Salgado, it's like nothing else. There aren't any other photographers that I think he looks like. You don't see a lot of people. I'm sure there are people that are largely influenced by Salgado, but it's not an easy style to copy. And therefore, it stands out as being really unique. And, this is a great book. There's lots of fold-outs in here. And there's a ton of images. What's also nice is all the images are indexed by series, so if you're curious as to what something is, or if you're looking for something, it's really easy to find in the front of the book. This is a great shot too. I love this worker with the welding goggles on, with the head tilted back, and the sense of emotion that comes out of this. Again, probably not a lot of beautiful stuff to shoot on this location, so it's about waiting for a certain person in a certain point in time, and it's about immersing yourself in that worker type culture. And you know, it is not easy to do. Just little stuff like, you know, this figure jumping over here to you know, facilitate whatever's going on, you know, but this expression of the body that comes into play, the welding with all the smoke going on, you know, it's really tough to get these shots, and obviously contrast comes into play on these. It's a big part of the shots. It's what is not being photographed in some of these, with the negative space and the shadows, and it really creates a beautiful beautiful effect. I love this too, with these pyramids off on the right-hand side, and the fog, and you know, suggestion of what might be. Another welding shot. Anyway, just absolutely stunning work. I would check this out. Workers is amazing. Here's another one that's interesting too. And again, we're at basically a train track here. What's interesting to shoot? Well, waiting for this guy to do something interesting. You know, it's really difficult to find those moments. And if, you know, you consider like the Henri Cartier-Bresson mindset of waiting for the decisive moment. Sometimes it's, you know, this gentleman's out here working, but there's something compositionally interesting happening with the tracks here. So, you know, with Salgado, you're seeing a very well-rounded, a very, and I don't like the word advanced, but a very deep photographer in the sense of the range of stuff he's able to capture and the range of mood. Here's another one that's shot through a raining windshield on a train. You know, just looking for these moments that is just particularly amazing, and Salgado was so good at this. Anyway, once again, that book is Workers. I will link this up in the show notes, and that is the work of Sebastião Salgado. Salgado is a very complex individual and a very complex photographer, I believe. And as you can see in his work, it's simply amazing what he's able to do with a camera. I'm not aware of anybody else that shoots in a style like this. And you know, there's a certain sense of individuality about it, but I also love the fact that Salgado's inspiration is to use the camera as means of visual communication to make the world a better place. Another thing I really like about Sebastião Salgado is you're looking at somebody who, I mean, I'm sure he's been an intense character his entire life, but you know, he had this whole career that was set out for him. He even got a master's degree and went to go work in economics. And after engaging in this career is when he decided that he had this passion for photography, and he decided he was fairly good at it, and he polished his skills, and then went on to have this enormously successful Cinderella career as a photographer, being able to work for Magnum and shoot the locations he shot. I can guarantee you a lot of this work was not glamorous to do, but I think that also intensifies and gives you an appreciation for the talent level of somebody like Salgado. And you know, I also like that has a message that it sends that says you don't have to be a child prodigy at something. We all are kind of put on this planet, and we figure out what we're good at and what it is that we're kind of called to do, and he certainly did all that. I encourage you to go research more about Salgado. You know, in these short videos that we do, it's hard to really get our heads around all the complexities of Salgado. One place I would like to start, and I will put a link in the show notes for this, but there is a wonderful TED Talk that Salgado gave a few years ago where he was talking about how the Genesis Project came to be. And he was talking about how he had literally burned himself out, you know, with all the travel schedule, a lot of the conditions that he was shooting in. He felt, in his words, that he was dying, and he thought he was actually physically sick, and went to the doctor, and had lost an interest in photography at this point in his career. And kind of, you know, to reset the clock, he and his wife moved back to Brazil and started becoming active with rainforest preservation, noticing they had gone back to the family land, and that it was pretty much decimated from where it was when Salgado was a child, and mainly because of industrialization and what we tend to do to this planet. And they really started this foundation and went full force into this. He also talks about shifting from shooting one animal species, which is people, to shooting animal species that are not people. And it's really interesting because it's still the same photographer, it's still the same, you know, amazing high level of talent and what he brings to the table as a photographer with Genesis. And, you know, but the message is different, and how it renewed his interest. Anyway, it's a great TED Talk. I will put a link in the show notes before, and I suggest you check it out. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Once again, this has been another episode of The Art of Photography. I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.